Okay, good morning everybody. You're all very welcome to WIT here this morning. Particularly welcome to all of our colleagues, students, friends, invited guests and members of Vicky's family. We're delighted to have you all here with us today for the special occasion. My name is Alison Keneally and I am Vice President for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion here at WIT, and I'll be doing a bit of MCing today for the event. So I'm truly delighted to welcome you here this morning as we gather for a very special celebration, I think, here in WIT, this International Women's Day. It's a celebration of the inimitable and inspirational Vicky Phelan, who we are honoured to have as an Honorary Fellow of WIT, and who many of you count as a treasured friend and a colleague. The esteem with which Vicky is held here in WIT and the sense of pride that our community feel in her achievements is rooted deep within us all. Her tireless work on behalf of the women of Ireland makes her an inspiration to us all. And Vicky, we thank you for all that you have done in our name. Before I go any further, I just want to inform you all that we are live streaming the event and recording it today, and there will be photography taking place also. So I'm going to kick off this morning's proceedings by inviting the President of WIT, Professor Willie Donnelly, to say a few words.
Thanks, Alison. It's wonderful to see so many people here this morning. So, colleagues, friends, invited guests, you're all very welcome to WIT this morning on International Women's Day as we gather for a very special event in honour of a very special person, Vicky Phelan. I'm particularly delighted to welcome members of Vicky's family who have joined us this morning, her father John, her mother Gaby, her sister Lindsay, and other friends and family. Our brothers here as well. Sorry, didn't mention you. I'd also like to extend a particular welcome to David Brennan, a lifelong friend of Vicky's, who bought this fantastic portrait, which you're about to see in a few minutes, at auction, and has kindly lent it to the WIT community for today's event, and also to the artist Vincent Devine, who created the portrait and who will talk to us about the portrait later on. On International Women's Day, we pause to think about the women who inspire us, women who challenge and refuse to accept the status quo, women who campaign and lead change for others. There's no better example of such a woman than Vicky Phelan. I was delighted to award Vicky an honorary fellowship in WIT in 2018, in recognition on behalf of the work she's done for women in Ireland. She's worked tirelessly and selflessly to campaign for women's healthcare. I have to say, meeting Vicky, I was struck by her positive energy, her humanity, her love for people and friendships, family and community. She has a beautiful, warm smile, a fun person to be with, and someone who gives generously of her time to others. I was struck by something Vicky said recently. She said she has the total belief in the power of one. In Vicky's own words, one person can make a difference. Always be prepared to ask the hard questions and to stand up for oneself and what one believes in. I think that's something that we can all buy into. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's important. Vicky is a role model for all members of the WIT community, and indeed a role model for our wider community, and is somebody who models the values and goals of our institute: accountability, transparency, equality, accessibility, openness. Values and goals which we will continue to embed as we become the South East Technological University over the coming months. As we come together to celebrate International Women's Day this morning, I'm also delighted to announce the launch of our new Women in Research network. This new forum for research active women will provide female and female identifying staff from WIT and IT Carlow the opportunity to connect and to collaborate to help build a more equitable and inclusive research culture in the new South East Technological University. To ensure that we develop a deeply inclusive and representative network, the Women Research Network will particularly encourage membership from women in our research community, from underrepresented groups, ethnic minorities, and the LGBT plus communities. And for the men in the audience, you are very welcome and encouraged to participate also. So don't feel left out, you've got to turn up. This network has been established as part of WIT's Human Resource Strategy for Researchers to support women in research in their career development, providing network and informal mentoring opportunities to access information and support. It's a forum for discussion and a unified voice to help raise issues and address the career challenges of women in research. One of the best ways you can do this is through women coming together to make things happen. The network is so important, forging those connections and sparking conversations to help women across our new university to develop their research careers. I'm really excited about this. I was the first VP of research, and while we have a very strong community of women involved in research, I think we can still do a lot more. And thanks to Emer for putting this together. That's Emer Fitzpatrick, who is charged and drove this. So membership to join this network officially opens today, Emer. And so Emer will circulate details, so get involved in this very exciting initiative. Finally, before I hand back to Alison, I would like to thank everybody who has come together to make today's events possible. All on the Employees Wellbeing Committee, the EDI office, our colleagues from estates, all of our speakers here this morning, and all who've worked so hard to make today's events happen. A huge thank you to David for lending us the portraits, and to Vincent for coming here to talk to us today. We really appreciate that. We'd like to thank our sponsors, WIT Novus, Bewley's, Flavins, who provided such wonderful hospitality. So I'm looking forward to hearing the other speakers. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Willie. Next, I'd like to call upon Dr. Helen Murphy, who's our Head of School of Lifelong Learning and Education, to say a few words. Helen.
Thanks very much, Alison. Good morning, colleagues, students, invited guests, Vicky's family, John, Gabby, Lee and Lindsay, friends, including David and Vincent, and all here today to mark International Women's Day here in WIT. Justine McCarthy of the Sunday Times wrote recently about ordinary women who will push feminism forward. Her point was it was not the job or role of politicians to push or manage the narrative around issues such as equality, transparency, integrity and fairness for women. It was the role of all of us to reclaim the women's movement for all genders. The article made me think of Vicky. Vicky Phelan is an ordinary woman who has done extraordinary good for women and for all in society. The values Vicky has demonstrated of leadership, strength, courage, resilience in the face of huge adversity are values we uphold and recognise here in WIT. And it gives me great pleasure today to launch a new Honorary Research Chair named after Vicky. The Vicky Phelan Chair in Equality and Access to Education will be awarded to a member of WIT staff following an internal competitive process. The successful applicant will have access to a research grant to conduct research into how we widen access to education with a specific focus on women. We know from international research that the educational attainment of the mother has an instrumental impact on educational attainment of children. This new Honorary Research Chair will be for a period of 3 years, and the successful recipient will be entitled to use the title the Vicky Phelan Chair in Equality and Access to Education. The creation of an Honorary Research Chair named after our friend, Vicky, aims to embed the values that Vicky stands for with the values of WIT and in time the new South East Technological University. We're here today to create a long-lasting link between Vicky, her family and the Institute. Vicky has not only provided motivation and inspiration to the community of WIT, but also to the women of Ireland and indeed to society at large. We'll be circulating further details of this new Honorary Research Chair later today, and I encourage all members of WIT staff who have an interest in this area to apply for this inaugural role. Thank you, Alison, and colleagues, for allowing us to launch this important role here today on International Women's Day. And I look forward to hearing our guests and other former colleagues of the school, Tammy Darcy included, later on this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen, and for that wonderful announcement. I think that's really fantastic that we'll have the Vicky Phelan Chair for Equality and Access to Education here at WIT. So now I would like to call upon Tammy Darcy. You were just name-checked, Tammy, so we'll call upon you now, founder of the Shona Project and former WIT colleague, of course, to speak. So, Tammy.
Good morning, everybody. Happy International Women's Day to everybody. It's always so nice to be asked back. It used to be me that organised the coffees and the teas for these events, so it's kind of weird to be invited to speak. It's great to see so many of you here, old friends, new friends. Great to see so many men here celebrating International Women's Day as well. Thanks to Roisin, Alison, Anne, Virgil and the rest of the team for organising this morning. It's really important for me to be a part of this, especially recognising the amazing work that Vicky has done. And I'm so sorry she can't be here, but it's great to see her whole family here as well. It's lovely to see you again. But myself and Vicky worked for many years in the School of Education on College Street, and both of us left at around the same time, but for very, very different reasons. I left to found the Shona Project, which is a non-profit organisation that supports teenage girls in every corner of Ireland. And in the School of Education and in the Schools of Business and the Tech Transfer Office before that, I learned a huge amount about how amazing it is when women support other women and uplift each other. I learned about leadership, about vulnerability, about empathy, all from the amazing women that I worked with. We laughed, we cried, we ranted, we vented, we bitched, we moaned, we celebrated each other. We ate way too much cake. There was always cake, I don't really know why. My dad had just passed away just a few weeks before I started in the School of Education, and I have to say that those women certainly played a part in putting me back together. So when I started coming up with ideas for the Shona Project, I was studying here at the time and working here. And my colleagues encouraged me, supported me, gave me advice and helped me to take a leap into something which I was terrified, absolutely terrified to do. And that taught me that when you have a good network of people behind you who believe in you more than you actually believe in yourself at times, you can achieve pretty much anything. I'm so proud to say that since then, the Shona Project has gone from strength to strength. We've delivered workshops to over 20,000 young women all over Ireland. Our Shine Festival, which happened this day last year, was attended by over 40,000 young women with over 1 million video loads in 3 days. We're encouraging girls to be kind, not just to others, but also to themselves, and we're changing lives and inspiring and empower girls to be their whole selves. I've approached that organisation with that same empathy, leadership, and authenticity that I learned while working here, and I think those values have played a huge part in how successful we've been. So when I was putting together this piece and trying to figure out what to say today, I came across an article that I wrote for the Shona Project about Vicky in 2018. It's called 5 Life Lessons I Learned from Vicky Phelan, and I just like to share them with you. This was read by girls all over Ireland. Number 1. Overcoming adversity can break you if you let it, or it can shape you into someone with amazing depth, resilience, empathy, and appreciation for the little things in life. No matter how dark the day is, there are always love and light to be found, and focusing on that will get you through anything. Number 2, always be your own champion. Never wait for somebody to come and save you. Sometimes you have to save yourself. And when others have given up hope, that's when you stand up and fight. Number 3, don't be afraid to question authority. We're brought up to believe in what the experts say. Believe in your gut always, challenge them. And even if you're not happy, get a second, third, fourth, fifth opinion, especially if you're making decisions that affect the rest of your life. And never apologise for that. Number 4, there's nothing in life more important than friends and family, and when you're facing your darkest hours, the people closest to you are all that matters, so let them know you love and appreciate them. And number 5, your health is everything, so don't ignore symptoms. Get checked, it could save your life, and men, that applies to you too. Your health is really everything that matters. Last year, as part of Shine Festival, I interviewed Vicky while she was in the US, having treatment, and she went out of her way to make time for it because she's really, really passionate about informing and empowering and inspiring the young girls of Ireland to speak up, to use their voices, to trust their guts, and to be unafraid of challenging those in power. That video, out of the 100 speakers that we had, was one of the most watched. And today, in honour of International Women's Day, we've reopened Shine Festival for schools, and Vicky's speech is being watched by thousands of girls in every corner of Ireland. So even today, she's inspiring and empowering. We're so grateful that she chose today as an opportunity to support our work. We're so grateful to the WIT community for always supporting our work. So we can continue to spread that message along into the future, because we're really only getting started. So again, to the team at WIT, for always supporting our mission and always supporting me personally, happy International Women's Day, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Tammy, thank you so much for that, and we're always honoured and delighted to support you and your fantastic work in any way we can. Part of today's event is fundraising for two charities which are very close to Vicky's heart, the Shona Project and the Solace Cancer Support Centre. And we're delighted to be joined here today by representatives from both those charities, and welcome you to WIT. I would like now to call upon Fergal O'Hanlon, who is the chairperson of the WIT Staff Social Club, to say a few words on behalf of its members. So Fergal.
Thanks, Alison. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow staff members, students, I'm delighted to be here today to speak to you in my role as chairperson of the Staff Social Club representing our staff members. I'd like to again extend a welcome to Vicky's parents, John and Gaby, her sister Lindsay, her brother Lee, and also to Robbie and Johnny, who are watching on. I'd also like to extend that welcome to Davy and to Vincent for joining us here today. To have the painting here for everyone to experience is befitting of the celebrations in the Institute to mark International Women's Day. Everyone who has seen the painting can identify in some way with the emotion and the meaning behind each part of the painting that I'm sure Vincent and David in a few moments will enlighten all of us here today. This morning, I would like to focus on what I think are the two most important women here today, and in particular in this event. Of course, we're here to celebrate our friend and colleague Vicky, but also her mother Gaby. I'm originally from Cavan. Don't hold that against me. Despite the rumours, I don't have my communion money, and I don't eat my dinner out of a drawer. But when I first met Laura here in WIT, we moved out to Mooncoin, where we still live. I was first introduced to the Kelly family and brought to their home. I should mention that Laura's family and the Kellys are neighbours. But I suppose thinking back on it now, those visits to the Kelly's house, I guess, were more of a scoping operation to make sure that I was approved of. Okay. But anyhow, from the moment I stepped into John and Gaby's home over 20 years ago, I felt welcome and immediately at ease. I share a love of sport, of cycle racing with John, so that helped. But as a measure of the woman that Vicky became and is, believe me when I tell you that I know Gaby, what I know of Gaby from the phrase, the apple didn't fall from the tree, is really true. Okay, there are many stories that I'm sure those of us who know Gaby would recall here, but let me share one with you that demonstrates for me the kindness and warmth of Gaby Kelly. So one of our regular chats, I suppose, we were chatting away in the kitchen as you do, and I think it was a few months to Christmas, so it was our first as a married couple, so of course I was spending Christmas away from the mammy in Cavan. So, you know, and I was going to celebrate it with Laura's family. So somehow the discussion came around to Christmas cakes, and I should tell you that Gaby loves to bake. So I happened to mention jokingly in passing that I won't have any Christmas cake this year, because as everyone knows, everyone loves Mammy's cooking. So would you believe it, 2 days before Christmas, Gaby arrives up to the house with a Christmas cake decorated gorgeously just for me. It was absolutely amazing. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional. For many years after that, Gaby would make a Christmas cake just for me. I've never forgotten that act of kindness shown to me, the blow-in from Gavin. You see, I've learned from the people of Mooncoin, they're notoriously protective of their own. But once they get to know you, you've got friends for life. Laura and I are lucky enough, and I just wanted to say, sorry, just end that that's just a small personal example to share with you how on this important day, the measure of the woman that Gaby Kelly is. So, Laura and I are lucky enough to call Davy and his wife Alicia our next door neighbours at home in Mooncoin. I've heard, all you've heard in the media is true. They are generous and kind of heart, and they are also two of the nicest, unassuming people that you could ever have hoped to have in your circle of friends. It was and remains for me a magnificent act of human kindness to purchase this painting, and I know to have the painting of your lifelong friend Vicky reside in Mooncoin is of great comfort to John and Gaby. Those who know Davy know that he never does anything in taffs. So he, not alone did he purchase the painting, he continues to organise the painting to tour the country and to raise both awareness of women's health and also raise funds for charity close to Vicky's heart. He wants as many people to see it as possible. When not on tour, I know the painting hangs proudly in his home, where it will remain a focal point and discussion point for all who visit. We are so lucky to have Vincent and yourself, Davy, join us here today at WIT to celebrate and support our friend and colleague Vicky. So I first met Vicky through Laura, but many years before that, I was actually living beside her when we were studying together in the University of Limerick. A while ago now, but from that time, Vicky and I share something in common. We are both huge Stunning fans. A bit of music trivia for those that don't know. I'm sure I'm looking around at the audience. There is a few students here, so I better tell you. So the Stunning are an Irish rock band that are still going strong with songs that resonated with my generation. I feel very old now. Okay. But back in those days, on many nights out, Vicky, Marie, Susan, myself, all avid Stunning fans, would chat about the Stunning gigs we have been to and our favourite songs and so on. We've been to so many Stunning gigs together over the years, but perhaps the most special was the gig that they performed in the Rising Sun in Mullinavat just for Vicky. To be invited to share that night with Vicky, her family and her friends was one I will remember forever. Dancing away, well, that's a very loose term. I'm not too sure if it's dancing. On that small dance floor, singing along to every song, word for word, laughing, smiling, and just enjoying being there and sharing in Vicky's happiness. Of course, there are many stunning songs and references that I could make here today that would adequately describe the wonderful woman Vicky is and the things that she has done. For example, Brewing Up a Storm, This Happy Girl, Heads Are Gonna Roll, She's on My Mind. I could keep going. But I'm going to share just one with you. On the latest album, Twice Around the World, they have two new songs that I know from speaking to Vicky she particularly likes, Always You and Carrying the Fire. And it's that last song that every time I hear it reminds me of that gig, but in particular Vicky. Not only has she carried the fire for Women of Ireland, she lit the fire, and now she continues to keep it burning. As a society in general, we owe a great debt to Vicky for being a fantastic advocate for the healthcare and welfare of the Women of Ireland. People listen to Vicky, and so they rightly should. In modern Ireland, it shouldn't have to be said, but I hope those in government and those in charge of the vital services for women's healthcare are continually listening to people like Vicky, like Lorraine, like Stephen, and the many other women who have sadly succumbed to the fight. Gaby and John, I'm sure it has been said many times to you, but you should be very proud of the woman you raised, the mother Vicky has grown up to be, and the woman that we have all come to know, to respect and to love here in WIT, in Waterford, in Kilkenny, all over Ireland, and indeed all over the world. I wish Vicky, Jim, Dara, Amelia, John, Gaby, and all the family, on behalf of the members of the Staff Social Club, our sincere and heartfelt best wishes as she continues her fight. We are praying for you, but in particular to Vicky, I know you are battling hard. Stay strong and keep up the fight, our friend. I'm honoured on this special International Women's Day to be asked to be part of today's visit. The Staff Social Club are delighted to make a presentation. Excuse me, I'm really sorry. to our staff and to two very worthy charities. So I could ask the charities to come up when we make the presentation for €1,000 from the Staff Social Club. Again, apologies for being so emotional. This isn't a real check. You have to. No, sorry. Good luck bringing this to the bank.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fergal. Okay, well, next I'm delighted to invite David Brennan, who is a lifelong friend of Vicky and her family and owner of the Vicky Phelan Portrait, to speak. David's foresight and generosity is the reason that we are all gathered here today, and we are so grateful, David, for your incredible support. So I will hand over to you.
My words have been shortened down somewhat. Thanks, Fergal. Lovely words, though. Lovely words from everybody. We're very happy to be here today, especially on International Women's Day. I suppose I'll go back to how this happened. We obviously, a lot of people had seen it on the Late Late Show, January in 21, but we were also watching it, and immediately when we saw the portrait being unveiled, and we had a slight insight into what was in it. You'll learn more about it today. But we instantly looked at each other, myself and my wife, and said, we have to get that. We have to bring it back to Moonkind. It could only stay in Moonkind. And so from then on, I registered online. It was an online auction, of course, because COVID was rampant at the time. And so I registered, and it was going to, all the monies raised was going to go to Heroes Aid. So it was a very worthy cause. And I'd been messaging Vicky because obviously Vicky then was going to the States on her treatment, and we'd been messaging back and forth. And as the few weeks went by, coming closer to the auction, I started to imagine what the portrait could do. And I'd be messaging Vicky back and forth as well. And as time went on, I kind of said, and I said it to Gail in the office too, I said, I don't think we're going to get this anyway, do you know? Because I suppose there was a heightened amount of media around it, and that, possibly somebody was going to, pay big money for this and lock it away in the basement and cash it in 10 or 15 or 20 years' time. So, but we had been messaging back and forth, myself and Vicky, and as the few days and weeks were going by, we started to kind of share the same, I suppose, imagination that we were both thinking of what it could do, where it could go, who it could support. And I had asked Vicky, I said, wouldn't it be great if we went to WIT or if we went to UL and these places, and what kind of charities could it support? So I'd asked her, and she sent me back a list of a few charities, just in messaging kind of at the time. But the Shona Project and Solar Centre were the first two she had mentioned. And the days coming up to the auction, James is here today. He's in the office with me, and I purposely sent James to work from home that day because I didn't want anybody knowing that I was going to bid on it. I really didn't think we were going to get it. So I'd only told Vicky because I got a message from Vicky, maybe it must have been 3 o'clock in the morning, and I read it when I woke up. And again, it was about the portrait, and then it was just general chit chat. But there was a huge amount of messages beyond that, again about the portrait and what we could do with it, or somebody could do with it. So I was in the office. James wasn't there, and I said, right, it's about 2 hours to go. I better let Vicky know that I'm going to bid on the portrait and see what happens. So I got this screaming message back from her, oh, Jesus Christ, don't spend too much money. So what are you doing? So anyway, we went online, and actually I was on it was over the phone, and there was a few people online bidding online at the time. There was people in Singapore, London, quite a few people in Ireland. And there was also somebody near Mooncoin, I think it was in Piltown, was bidding on it as well, unbeknownst to us at the time. So 6 minutes is all it lasted, and the hammer dropped. And but the lady that was on the phone with me, she was also the lady that I spoke to a number of weeks prior to that when I had registered. So she understood my connection with the Kelly family and Vicky, and she got extremely emotional, you know, and I could hear her as the numbers were going down each time, and the gap was getting smaller, and I just had to throw a big number out there to try and, you know, get this, and I could hear her saying, please, 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 no more, no more. So anyway, I was sweating at the desk. Thankfully James wasn't there. The hammer dropped, and the first person I called was Vicky. So, but she couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And that was that. I think I had spoken to John and Gabe then straight away. Sure, the rest is history. But and then as the weeks went by, the months went by, of course, COVID scuppered a lot of our plans at the time, and we did plan on having going out to Listowel with whoever bought. In fact, Vicky had invited me down to Listowel, not knowing that, you know, we didn't even buy it at the time, but whoever had bought it, there was going to be a party down in Listowel in Billy Keane's pub, and Vincent was going to be there, and so on. But the party didn't happen because of COVID. But we had a lovely inaugural display eventually in Mooncoin. And everything that we had imagined and spoke about by text, it just all happened. And it happened because of the love for Vicky, really, do you know? And WIT was the next one. We said, well, we have to do Mooncoin, WIT, UL, all those places that are close, obviously, to Vicky, and they have to be, you know, first priority. And, you know, WIT reached out to us, and we snapped it up like that. But you know, you've done a tremendous, you've done a Vicky Phelan on it, right? You've done such a description, you know, you just got shit done. We did nothing, like, and just brought the portrait here. But I mean, our main reason of bringing it to all these places, especially the you know, the educational institutions, is to raise the awareness that Vicky wants to get out there, and her message is to, you know, is to raise awareness of cervical cancer and the preventions associated with that. And, you know, HPV is the greatest cause of cervical cancer, but there's a vaccination against it, and every young kid should have it. Boys and girls, boys can spread it too. So if anything, if somebody goes out of here today and decides, I'm going to get my smear test done, I haven't got it done in a few years, then it's worth it if somebody gets picked up on it, you know. And somebody had already this morning mentioned it to me. And at the inaugural display in Mooncoin, Vincent got a couple of calls, I got a couple of calls of women who had attended, and it just triggered in their head, you know what am I waiting for? Just go and get it bloody done. Do you know, why not? You know, it's there, it's free. You know, why wouldn't you do it? So, so that's what we want to do. We were here last night, and there was a poem read out, which you will hear shortly. And you know, I put up the frame last night to save a bit of time this morning, but there were some lovely words spoke about Vicky today here as well. But somebody mentioned last night, there isn't enough words to describe Vicky Phelan. There simply isn't, you know, and the love that she's probably feeling today from this, and she will watch it later on. I messaged her last night that, you know, she'll have the link as well. But Vicky's family are here; they can feel the love as well for her, and we couldn't be prouder of what Vicky has done. And you know, we're so grateful that we have the opportunity to get here today in WIT amongst her colleagues, her friends, her family, and their students. And it's great to see, you know, young girls and boys here as well. So that's what we want. We want the youngsters to get in here, because they're the ones that we're going to influence as well in terms of, you know, carrying on Vicky's story. You know, there's a lot more to it, and as it was said last night, there isn't enough words that can describe Vicky Phelan. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Vincent Devine, and he will go through the portrait with everybody here today. So thank you very much, everybody.
So I know David said there's no words, but I'm going to try. And after this talk, I think you'll know why I kissed the Blarney Stone twice, which you can tell me if that worked or not. I first of all want to just say thanks. First of all, WIT for the incredible behind-the-scenes work. I've literally had to just show up and just talk. And I mean, that's an incredible privilege in and of itself. I also just want to thank David as well. David didn't realise when he bought the painting, he is not only now a collector, but he's now a patron. And a patron means somebody buys your work and sees such value in it, they will bring you all around the country because they see the value of what you're trying to do. And that's an incredible privilege as an artist and a real honour. So I just want to say thanks to David because, like I said, we are all developing a new language of expression of what we mean to each other and how much we express gratitude. But it's beyond words at the moment, but we'll get there eventually. And I just want to, the family. You know, when I sat in front of Vicky and people said, where does she get that strength from? And I looked into her eyes. And that's why people are so taken by the eyes. You have to get the eyes of the person. And that's just paint. When you see it, it's just paint. And there was tenacity behind her eyes that I said, I haven't seen that before in many people. And then I met Gaby Kelly. And I went, makes sense now. All clicked into place. And I said, that's resilience. Real resilience. And me and Vicky spoke at length about the life she's had and the tenacity. And her family have been a massive part of that tenacity. And that's something that we really wanted to get across when it came to collaborating with this painting. And on International Women's Day, I think there's no bigger accolade than to understand that Vicky is a lot of the way she is because of you, Gaby. And I can put my hand on heart and say that. So can we please give Gaby and the rest of the family a round of applause. I've just turned my mic on in case I'm not loud enough. Is that a little bit better or will I turn it off? Did Blarney Stone work yet? No? Okay. So I tend to not plan what I'm going to say and I kind of let it flow the way it's going to flow. So we'll do whatever it needs to do for today. But I've been told to not hold back. So if something upsets you or something triggers you or something like that, just be aware that this can get quite deep. But like Vicky, I don't hold back. And that was very important to her moving forward, is just give it the way it's going to go. So just be aware of that. Because some stuff can get quite heavy in this. But like Vicky, I'm trying to flirt with the balance of humour and the seriousness of what needs to be done. So I hope you'll see that for what's to come. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the portrait. It's a triptych, so it's meant to be read from left to right. And what I'll do is we'll take off one piece at a time and then I'll take you through the idea behind it. So just a little bit of background as to how this all came about. As Davey had mentioned, it was for the charity Heroes Aid and it was to support frontline workers during the pandemic. So me sitting in my studio, looking out my window at this kind of dystopian Armageddon COVID-19 fiasco that was there, I just said, what can I do? What can I do? How can I contribute? So we came up with the idea of painting Vicky, and the reason was because of a female painter called Artemisia Gentileschi. I don't know if you've ever heard of that woman, but when you learn how to spell it, look it up afterwards. And this lady was a painter in a period of art called the Baroque period in the 1600s in Rome. And Vicky came to my studio with absolutely zero intention of sitting for that portrait. Zero. She thought she was going to walk into this room of someone that was going to start throwing language about art history and flowery language and all this stuff. And what happened was there was an incredible connection with the two of us because we just dropped the BS straight away and we just got to the point. And what happened was, behind her mask which maybe is why I got the eyes, and people say the eyes are so good. All I had was her eyes on the first meeting, like some people here as well. All I had was the eyes, so I had to connect to those eyes and make sure what I was saying was connecting to Vicky. And this woman, especially in International Women's Day, it's very important. She's a massive feminist figure in art history and human history. Her story was so harrowing and so about endurance. I think Vicky connected to that. And that's why she agreed to sit for the portrait, after coming in with no intention. So we instantly fell into each other very quickly. Vicky's very open, as everyone has seen her in the media. And we just got on like a house on fire, just straight away. And what happened was this incredible relationship unfolded where there was no holds barred. It was very much, whatever you want to know, Vincent, here it is. So what started the process was I researched her book. And I have her memoir at home, and it's just highlighter after highlighter after highlighter. So I took all the parts I thought people could connect with. And then any holes that was in it that I had questions about, I would go to Vicky and say, Vicky, can I have more information on this? And there was never, mind your own business, don't ask me those questions. She is able to have the hard conversations that sometimes we can't have. And I think that's what David sees as important about this portrait, is that it can open up an avenue to have difficult conversations about difficult things. So we had hours and hours of conversation. And the painting is set in Doonbeg, and that's at Vicky's behest, because she said that that's essentially where she wants her ashes scattered, but it's the place she finds the most solace in the world. She walks along Doonbeg Beach and she gets that space to herself that people sometimes so lack in a kind of an overworked, stressed society. And she said, it's just my most favourite place in the whole world. And the poignancy of that was, to me, as a researcher and an artist, was nothing can ever remain on the beach. The tide will always bring it back out. And when you look at this portrait, you'll see her rooted into the sand, wanting to stay, wanting to fight. But the flood's coming for all of us. The tide's coming for everybody. And this painting will far outlast Vicky, us, all of us. And that's what we're here to do today, is to use Vicky's story and her legacy so we can help save lives. That's the intention here. And I want to thank every single one of you for giving me your time. And I really hope I can add some value to that. So when we went to Doonbeg, Vicky thought I was just going to bring her down and take photographs of the beach. What she didn't think was I was going to get a chair, a fold-up deck chair, and put her sitting in the surf in minus whatever temperatures. Which, and in fairness, she just did it. But the night we went to Doonbeg is known as a very kind of a surfing beach, plenty of waves. And I rang Vicky on the Thursday night, and serendipitously she was in Doonbeg and invited me down the Friday night. And she had said that the calmness of the beach on that night she hadn't seen maybe 5 or 6 times before, and she'd been in Doonbeg a lot of times, her favourite place. And it's almost like the stars aligned for that one particular night, and we took photographs as the sun was setting behind her. Beautiful, beautiful photographs. And she was so relaxed and calm, and I told her to not wear a screed of makeup, and you know, and that in itself threw up challenges because it didn't look like the public Vicky that we all know. And then I just got to painting, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So without further ado, I'm going to just unveil the first panel of the triptych, and I'm going to take you through, in doing so, I'll take you through the story, essentially, of Vicky's life. So the first panel is a black horse. There's a few different reasons for this. Now the reason that Vicky liked it set on the beach as well is because John's a fisherman by trade. So water was very important to her, so it was about which body of water we were going to show. So unfortunately she chose Doonbeg instead of somewhere down here, but you know, she was the boss. But this black horse, there was an event that happened to Vicky that was very strange. And when she was out for a walk in Limerick one day, she had her headphones on and she had a cap on. And there was a man walking towards her with two dogs, two big dogs. And as she got closer, the dog started to rear and bark at her. And Vicky had said, it was very strange, so she took, the guy was pointing then behind her. And the man who was walking the dog said there was a massive black horse barreling down behind Vicky, just going to run her over. So the guy took her headphones out. The guy said, I'm going to let the dogs off the leash and they'll chase this horse away. So off they went anyway, and the horse got spooked and went off, and Vicky kind of got a bit spooked herself. Took the headphones out, and then she was at a roundabout in Limerick, and this horse found her again. Same black horse, found her again. And she said she was so afraid. She was on the roundabout, it was stamping at the ground, it was going to charge. And a car, a Mini Cooper of all, pulled up on the roundabout, swung the door open and told her to hop in. And that horse chased them for miles up the road. Miles. And I think she said it to you, Lindsay, and you said that didn't happen. And she goes, how would you make that up? She goes, Lindsay, how would you make something like that up? And it is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And me and Vicky talked about it, and there's a few scenarios we went through that day. One scenario is that this was an abused horse who, when Vicky presented with the hat and the way she was dressed, was trying to attack its abuser. The other idea was that horses are incredibly intuitive animals. So this horse may have picked up on her very deep depression at the time. It was after she had her two children. And picked up on this very deep, deep depression she was going through at the moment and was trying to console her in some way. But that's open to interpretation. But what the symbolism behind this is, so a lot of things you'll see in the painting represent something else. But this black horse represents the cancer that would pursue her aggressively through her adult life. And in the middle panel, you'll see some of the events that led, at what we believe, to that cancer and the stress that led to it. But in the horse here, you have the brain to represent intuition, and you have the heart to represent compassion. And that's what that horse represents. We don't know what the horse was trying to do, but the pose of the horse, it means the horse is in retreat. And that will make more sense when you see the central panel. This horse has been held back. And the reason it's been held back is because Vicky held her cancer back for so long, based on her research, her heart, and her intellect. And she used that very prominently. So what I'll do is now is I'll unveil the second panel, and there's a lot to unpack in the second one. So in the central panel, you have Vicky as a sitter. What I do in the telling of the central panel is I will dialogue just from the head down through the body. And what I do is I use the anatomy in order to tell the story, just like I've done with the horse here in the start, with the head and the heart. I've used Vicky's entire anatomy, her scars and everything, in order to dialogue the depth of her story. And when we unveiled this on the Late Late Show, Vicky got feedback, honest feedback. And some people said, it's a bit much, it's a bit exposed. And our answer to that was, every single one of you in the audience is living with your anatomy. It's all inside you. It's just that your naked eye cannot perceive it. Everyone lives with scars, psychological and physical as well. And that's why I choose to do the anatomy. It's to make the invisible visible, especially something like cancer that is so invisible until you find it. And me and Vicky looked at her entire life and tried to trace where that cancer may have came from. So I will expound on that slightly, you know, because in researching the story of her life, you can see how harrowing some of the situations have been, and it's very hard not to see how some events may have led to it. So first, to get it out of the way, the logo around her head, this is actually my logo of a manifesto I've written. It's titled Neo-Dimensionism. It's a 7,000-word document to support this work I'm doing. It's part of a larger body of work that Vicky wanted to attach herself to, essentially. And this just comes around her head, it's almost like a halo or an aura. But my intention for this painting partially is for Vicky to be seen almost in a patron saint, but without any of the necessarily religious connotations to go with that. I want people to look at her as a figure. And then what happens is you come down here, and I have her hair cascading down the side of her face, because she didn't lose her hair during her treatment. That was very important to her. Sadly, she's lost her hair now, but this is why you come down the far side of it here. And she has both her hair and no hair, which was us kind of, I suppose, projecting into the future of what was coming down the line. But if you look at the side of her temple here, her brain comes up here, and it's almost like a laurel plant. So a laurel plant represents historical importance. And I wanted that to kind of adorn the side of where her intellect is, her brain, to represent that her intuition and her intellect and her research abilities, that a lot of which she learned here, essentially extended and saved her life to this point. So extended her standard of living because of the research that she did. You come into her eyes, which are very fixed on the viewer, especially when you get a close-up view of them. And that was important to why I had to sit across from her. I had to sit across from Vicky and get a feel for who she was as a person. And that's why her being so open and honest led to, I suppose, the reaction across the country and the world to her. You come down then and she has this kind of fixed smile, like she almost has a knowing smile, like she knows something that we don't know. And like most of us, that we have that ability in us to know things and have a bigger... Because Vicky's intuition is a big part of who she is. And she says she goes with her gut. And if her gut tells her something, like when she was in the GPs, and her gut told her something wasn't right about what she was hearing, she grabbed the file, took the photograph, and then worried about it afterwards. And she's a very big advocate of that, intuition, without the woo-woo stuff there at the side of it, you know, kind of the intellectualising side of it. You come down then, now some parts may be hard to see because we don't have the close-up, but I invite you to view it afterwards and go up and look at stuff. So you have her vocal cords here in the middle. So Lindsay and her have a necklace, and it has an infinity symbol in it to represent connection. But I wanted to put it in as well around her vocal cords to represent that I want Vicky's voice to continue into infinity for women's rights, for what she advocates for. And it just represents the necklace there as well, which she wore on the photo shoot as well for that. You come down then into her lungs. Now her lungs are big, bold and vibrant, and that represents being a big, bold and vibrant person in order to get her message across. So this is why I use the anatomy, because the lungs exemplify the fact that you're speaking out about something. One of them is connected into her breast, where you see the milk ducts highlighted. That represents she breastfed both her kids and is a very big, proud fan of that. And she said it's not advocated for enough, especially in our society, especially in Irish society. It's very underrepresented. And my partner Lynn breastfed all 3 of her kids for as long as she could. And when she couldn't, she would have to stop. So that's an important part of what Vicky said. And she endured the breastfeeding because she knew it was best for the children, and she enjoyed it. And you come down then into the other lung, and this is a generalised lung to represent, generally speaking, for women's health. You come down into her heart here. Her heart has blue at the back and it's vibrant in the front to represent that throughout her life she has had tragedies that have shaped who she is and why she does the things she does. But she holds that in full awareness. Vicky is very aware. She knows herself. And she really embraces that. And what you have as well is you have so anyone who hasn't read the memoir, I'll kind of dip in slightly. So Vicky's first journey into medical recovery was when she had a car crash in France at 17, and she broke 70% of the bones in her body. She broke it right across where the seatbelt was in her chest, and right across her pelvis, and she broke her legs as well. And she also had a bad incident. So what happened was, when the car went off the road, there was an off-duty person coming back, and he came across the accident and pulled her out. Fireman, wasn't it? And she broke her ankle. A lot of stuff happened, and John and Gaby were there for the recovery of that. That was a very big part of her life, and it was the start of this medical journey. And her recovery from that was very traumatic. So what you have here is you have the brushstroke very aggressively going down through the ribs. So I paint the ribs in, and then I aggressively go down through it to represent that breakage. And you have also her pelvic bone here, which is smashed, and the femur bone here coming up the leg. But what you also have as well is, that's how David is connected to that part of Vicky's journey. Because when I unveiled this in Shepherd's Auctioneers, that's when Davy got incredibly emotional, because Davy remembers Vicky coming back from that car crash and how bad it was. And the people of Mooncoin raised money to help you get her back. And that's why this part of the country is so close to Vicky, and she has said that and wants that to be said as well. And then David had said, because he was a family friend, after not a very long recovery, he looked up the housing estate they were living in, and here she was running around the corner, jogging. And that's when David said, that woman is meant for big things, because that's incredible. That's tenacity, that's endurance. And we all see that now in what she's trying to bring forward into the world. So when you keep going here, you have the shamrocks on top of her heart. The shamrocks represent you, the people of Ireland, taking Vicky into your own hearts. And that was her idea. They're just kind of nestled as a little bunch of shamrocks on her heart. And you come down then and you have her aorta. And I have painted the tumours in as thick lumps of paint. And this was before she went to America for her treatment. So what I've done is I actually took a scalpel, and when the paint was dry, I tried to scrape them off to kind of manifest maybe these tumours being taken away in America. And it's all around this area here, which is her aorta. In her lap, you have the brain. Now, it's very hard to see because we don't have close-ups. You have the brain here, and you have a book in her lap. And that's to represent her intellect, keeping her researching to figure out what treatment was best for her to extend her standard of living after she got the diagnosis. And that's education, and WIT is incredibly important to her for that reason. And then you move along then into her two hands. So in her two hands, which occupy, which is very important, she can do nothing else with them, are her two children. So you have Amelia here, and she's represented as a crimson rosella. Now the reason for the crimson rosella is because it's a bird that is notoriously against being caged. And Amelia is a free spirit. And Amelia has had a certain journey as well. Because after the car crash, Vicky was covered in scars. And Amelia was born with toxoplasmosis, that's the word. And there's a few ideas, I spoke to Gaby beforehand about how that happened. So what happened is a parasite got into Vicky's eye, maybe when she was doing gardening. And the parasite goes down into the body, and then it starts to attack the fetal tissue. And Amelia was born with a lot of extra medical needs. She was on a massive amount of medication. That was also coming along with her PTSD from the car crash and postnatal depression. So here we have, on International Women's Day, speaking about this woman who has had all these obstacles to overcome. And they're almost silent obstacles, which obviously may have led to the cancer. But this is where Gaby came into the situation and gave that support that Vicky needed. I think it's important to speak to that about women supporting women and men supporting women as well. And I'll go into that a little bit later on. But the crimson rosella here is in its teenage years. So this is the colour it presents at when it's a teenager. And when it's an adult, it will turn into a bright, vibrant blue and a red. But Amelia's a teenager at the moment, so I wanted to mark that. You have, in the other hand, you have her son Dara. And Dara comes from the name, Irish word for oak tree. And here Dara is this little sapling oak. And you want to imagine that when she leaves this painting, this scene, she will plant that seed and it will grow to a big, strong oak tree. These are two children she's leaving behind. In the palm of the hand here, and you can't see it until closer inspection, there's a small coin. The coin represents when Dara and her were in Kildare village once, Dara made a wish that his mother's cancer would go away, and then wrote a note to Vicky about it. And that broke her heart. But if you look at the star up in the sky, this is a symbol of hope for Dara. Because how she explained to Dara what the cancer was in her body when she got diagnosed, she said the way she described it to him at the age she was at was it was like the Death Star from Star Wars, strangely enough. She said the Jedi or the Doctor is trying to lance it off and get rid of it, and the Death Star could potentially destroy her. And she said that was just so accessible for a child, and it made that part of it so much easier. So that was an absolute must in the painting, and Vicky said that had to go in. You move down then, and you also have her union with Jim here, so this wedding band, to represent that these two children was this uniting of the two of them. Moving on then as well, you have the Pembroke. So the Pembroke was what extended her life to have such a good standard of living. The Pembroke is going in here through her veins, up through her arm. She would say when she went to the doctors and in to get the infusions, she would lie and she would just imagine the Pembroke going into her veins and all throughout her body. And she said when she went in, she put the headphones in and she would walk in. She never felt like she was a patient, she felt like she was a survivor. And that mindset, she said, made everything much easier going forward. So the Pembroke is coming up through her body. You come down then and you come into the pelvic area, the pelvic region. Now, this part is important for Vicky because she wants me to openly speak about what happens before, during and after cervical cancer. She said one of the early indicators was she was intimate with Jim and there was a letdown of blood. And it was the colour of the blood that had she known what shade it was, that she would have went and got checked quicker. It was a certain shade, and that's why I tried to match the shade. It's here in around the cervical area here. I tried to match that shade of colour here. She also said there's a lot of things that people don't know about and won't speak about, like the lowering of the cervix, making penetrative sex nearly impossible for most men and women. And she said this creates a lot of problems in the relationship, and it ends to relationships breaking up because the man wants to be there for his partner emotionally. They can't have penetrative sex, and it leads to all these different issues. She says certain things happen like pubic hair falling out, the vaginal area becoming very tender and not being able to even wipe after urination. She said, this is stuff that women are finding out on the toilet in a room on their own. And she said, it's not good enough. And some women I speak to, different ages, I was at an event and I spoke to two women in their mid-50s. And they said, you know more about gynecological health than we do. And you're 35. So we better go get checked because I'm embarrassed. And me and Vicky spoke about that. We spoke about the fact my first entry into gynecological health was my partner Lynn got pregnant and we didn't find out until she was 34 weeks. So I had to get wise fairly quick, I can tell you. I was saving for a car. And I went and had to buy cribs and, buggies and everything. But Lynn's disconnect from her body was due to her PTSD. And now I'm not expert, by the way. I just do my bit of research. It was her out of her bodiness. And Lynn has had brushes with postnatal depression as well. And it's about, I suppose, men being there to support the women in these things going forward. And the more awareness we increase about it, which is why David sees value in the painting, the more people will feel they can come forward and openly dialogue about these gynecological issues. Now, can I just make this very clear to everybody? I'm not trying to tell women what to do. I'm just saying I'm here in support, and me and David are here in support. To say we're here to support, we're teachable. If we've something to learn, teach us. And we will facilitate whatever awareness or whatever exposure we need for women to have that space, and for men to have the space as well. I'm of the opinion, if you become pregnant, your partner, husband, should be as aware of your gynecological health along the way, just as a matter of empathy and understanding. I mean, my daughter is now going through her menstrual stage. She's coming on to 11, and she's very open about coming down and speaking to me about discharge, things about her body as it's changing. And the only reason for that is because she met Vicky Phelan. That's the reason. And I had to sit her down and say, here's what the painting's about. But I couldn't give her the entire details at 10 years of age. I gave her the toned down version. And it had such a profound effect on her. She has said, Annalie has said that she wants to do something with women's rights and maybe go into politics. Don't know where I am on that one yet. But this is the power of what Vicky is doing for people. This is the power of the change she's affecting with girls as young as 10, And if we can just start breaking down those barriers around narrative and conversation, I think that can really help people. Now, the femur bone here has thrown up a very interesting development. So after we were featured on Nationwide with the painting, I got an email from a woman who said that she would like to know why the femur bone was painted in such a prominent position and why it was so there. And funnily enough, when I painted the femur bone in and I stood back and looked at it, I went, why did you paint that like that? And I was arguing with myself in front of the painting, oh, take it in, leave it out, take it in, leave it out, take it in, leave it out, for about 15 minutes, because that's all the time I had. And I left it in and just trusted, like Vicky trusted her intuition, that something was in it, without me even knowing it, essentially. So this lady got in touch and said that she wanted to know, and I said, well, it's there. I said, I don't know why it's there. And she said, well, did you know that one of the early signs of symptoms of cervical cancer is a broken femur bone? And I kind of was taken back and said, no, I didn't. And Vicky didn't know that either when I rang her. So there is stuff here that even the wonderful Vicky Phelan's finding out that she didn't know. And it's all because of the dialogue that's happening around the painting and people coming forward and being brave enough to tell their stories, like Vicky has been. So she's an absolute trailblazer in that regard. And we need more trailblazers to come behind her and do what ordinary people are doing. Vicky is an ordinary person doing something extraordinary. That's the best way to describe her. And once more people show up and are brave enough to do that, I think we can start to change things. On this little green island of ours, we can start a snowball effect that can really change things all around the world. I believe that. I believe in the power of what Vicky has done. You come down the rest of her body here, and you see her foot here is rooted into the sand. This desire to stay. I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay. But that's why setting it on the beach is, in a way, a kind of an oxymoron. Hope that's the right word. Nothing can stay on the beach. It has to go out with the tide. But she desperately wants to stay. And a lot of that has got to do with a certain amount of negligences that need to be spoken about. And she's been very vocal about that. But under here, now you might not see it because of the coloration here, but you have the colonnade of the High Courts underneath her foot. And this is Vicky crushing her High Court case. Because that's where most of us came to know her. It was on the steps of the High Court. And Vicky was in a bad state at that stage, and the family know that it was not looking great. And she stood there and took every bit of strength she could to address the nation and take on what needed to be taken on. And I think that's a very poignant part of the painting, and that was Vicky's idea. It's behind her, it's done, but she wants to show it, and she wants it to be acknowledged. You also have her two parents, John and Gaby, as these two trees underneath both her hands represent the support you both gave her with children all throughout the years, and that level of support you've given her throughout her entire life. Different things. And that was very important for her to put in as well. So that finishes Vicky as the central figure here. And what I'll do now is I'll move on to the third panel and speak a little bit more about that. The third panel is obviously a white horse. The reason for the white horse has different symbolism. One represents the white horse Tír na nÓg. Now the reason for this is because when this painting was painted, Vicky was on her way to America for a clinical trial. And I suppose the symbolism of the horse Tír na nÓg was the hope that she would come back. That this horse would bear her to the land of youth and extend her life somewhat more. There's also another symbolism for the white horse, which is the very famous old saying that death rides on a pale horse. That this could be personified as death. And it's looking back at Vicky, but it's looking back at a life well lived, a life of service. You can see it in the horse's eye on closer inspection. There's a kind of an inspiration behind the eye, a look back at this life that has served so many people. And what you have here in the center of the horse is a still life. So the candle represents the brevity of life. that anybody's light can be snuffed out like that. But it makes it more precarious the fact that it's beside the ocean. And you have the tissue paper here, and that represents the tenderness of the vagina area after a cervical surgery. And Vicky said it's very important for me to dialogue this throughout this as well. You have the very tender fabric to represent femininity, because Vicky is a very feminine person, and she likes that aspect of her personality. You also come down here as well, and you have mushrooms, and that represents awareness around fungal infections, things about women's health, because she believes that women should have an understanding of their gynecological health from the point of menstruation, essentially, and a certain awareness of it even before that. So it's just about dialoguing and talking, but there is a sanitary pad here at the bottom as well, and that's what that further represents. You come over here, and there's a lemon here beside a fig, and that represents the sweet fig and the bitter lemon to represent the bitter sweetness of a diagnosis or a prognosis. That even though Vicky knew what was happening to her and she got the answer she wanted, it was too late, it was bittersweet. You come across here as well, and you have the aubergine, or the eggplant. This may be slightly controversial, but the eggplant is to represent the phallus. Now, there's a reason for this. Vicky had said to me, especially because she founded the group, the 221 Plus group, of all the women affected by a cervical smear scandal. And she said some of the attitudes of the male consultants was, quite frankly, outrageous. And some of the statements that were said were absolutely outrageous. So what I did in the still life was I sliced the aubergine to say, just because you're a man and you have a certain amount of privilege as a consultant or a doctor, doesn't mean you're indispensable based on what's hanging between your legs. So just have a little bit of respect in your profession and understand you're dealing with human beings here. And don't be driven by your ego. Now, Vicky said to me, "Are you really going to put that in?" I said, "Yeah. Why not? You want to say it, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah, I do." She goes, "Well, go on, so put it in." This was a collaboration. It wasn't just, me picking and choosing. Vicky picked what went into this. And what you also have as well here is you have the roses. Now, this represents all the other Irish roses that are going through what Vicky's going through at the moment, what they may go through in the future, what your daughters may go through. It's all our Irish roses here in solidarity to say we see you, we respect you, and we understand what you're going through to a certain degree. You have the blue butterfly represents her friend Ruth, who passed away, who was also part of the smear scandal. And Ruth used to sign off her text messages as a blue butterfly. And that's how she wanted Ruth represented. And the power of that is that you can go to that blue butterfly and she can think about Ruth or she can think about blue butterfly. That's the power of art in general, is that everything that Vicky was thinking has been projected onto the canvas and is there as symbolism. Things that mean something else, but would mean something else to somebody else. You come down here as well, you have a pill packet to represent medicine, as in medical medicine, and you have a dowser here, which represents holistic medicine. So a dowser is something you put in your hand, and we say yes or no, it spins, or it goes back. It's a really old, ancient thing. And Vicky would have a certain belief in spirituality. A kind of a belief in spirituality that people feel like they can't speak about, like the very same conversation about intuition. You feel like you can't speak about intuition because there's a certain level of hijack there. You can't speak about holistic medicine, certain level of hijack. But there is a belief in it. And Vicky is a religious person, but not a religious person. And strangely enough, when I read her memoir, she was constantly handed relics of Padre Pio. But Pio is my middle name, and I didn't tell her that. Loads of slagging at school with that, by the way. Vincent Pio James Divine. I should have picked something outrageous for instead of the James. Just wanted to be normal, right? So I picked James. So she got a laugh out of that. So that kind of finishes up the still life in general. But what you have to finish off the painting is you have these footsteps leaving the canvas. Now, if you can notice with the light here, the bottom of the painting is textured. That's because I took sand from the beach in Doonbeg after we walked along it the next morning. And I took sand from the beach, which she kind of slagged me and said, "You get arrested for taking that sand off the beach afterwards." And then she was just joking, I thought I was going to have, But that's just who she is, you know it. And so I mixed it in with the paint, so there is actually Doonbeg in this painting, no matter where it goes. So the beach is here with us. It's there forever. And you have these two footsteps walking off the edge of the canvas. And that kind of represents, and it's walking off with hoof prints as well, that represents which horse is going to take her. And at the end of all this as well, she was fighting for the Diamond Dignity Bill. And, you know, because of her illness at the moment, she doesn't have that fight in her anymore. But there's also she's very passionate about. So that horse was kind of maybe her leaving on her own terms. And it kind of looks like which horse is going to take her? The black horse that's chased her whole life? Or is she going to go on her own terms? And here at the very, very edge, which is very slight, you see her heel leaving the edge of the canvas. But Vicky leaves on whatever terms she leaves on because of her strength, her tenacity, and who she is as a person. She's seen the painting. She likes the painting. She has her name behind the painting now. And I suppose me and David's hope for this painting is that it can save lives. And people will come up to it with their own experience and go and talk to their mothers, talk to their daughters, their sisters, everybody, so that nobody has to go through what Vicky went through. Don't let what Vicky went through be in vain. Look at your PTSD, look at your depressions, look at the things that are weighing you down. And if there are avenues, ask for the help. Because Vicky sometimes says she was too proud to ask for it, and then it was too late. But what she can stand for is that level of endurance and tenacity as somebody who has forever changed the landscape of this country for women. And for men, I'd like to think. So I think on International Women's Day, we should give Vicky Phelan a massive round of applause. So that about wraps me up. I'm not sure what we are for time. Are we inviting any questions, or how are we?
I think we can, yeah.
Okay, so how long will we have? Okay, so I'll invite any questions from anybody who has any in the audience.
And I know the piece of the story, and I know that you wouldn't mind explaining to the audience about the burn of that painting.
Yeah, so this is a very kind of poignant part of the painting. At one stage of Amelia's life, she was in a very, very bad accident, and her dress caught fire, and she was left with severe burns all over her body. And Vicky had said to me about the pain she felt that she couldn't describe and the trauma of that event. And she said that's what led the cancer to go so aggressively through her body. She said that traumatic event of seeing Amelia on fire led to that. So I said, how can I represent that for you, and do you want to represent it? So what I did is I took a flame to the canvas and I actually burned Vicky's body here on the canvas. So when you turn this canvas around, when it's off the frame, there are two scorch marks on the back of it. And that represents the invisibility of cancer, the invisibility of trauma. That nobody will ever see it until I tell you, go around to the back of the painting, there's something there. And that's the idea behind that. It's the want to take any sort of pain, be it psychological or physical, away from your children and not having the ability to do it, and then it leading to a certain level of illness. Any other questions? Anything you want?
How long did it actually take you to
From start to finish, about 3 months. A lot behind the painting is the research intensivity of it. So, for example, the level of research was such that I handed Vicky the notes. So anything I thought, I just put them into a notebook. And what happened was I handed her the notebook and said, there you go, that's my thoughts. And then after I handed it to her, I went, oh my God, what am I after doing? I said, literally, Anything I was thinking about, anything you'd be thinking about, or we'd be thinking about, was literally in that book. And that's the grace she gives you, is that nothing was off the table, and she went through every note in it, and she signed the stuff she wanted, and she wrote notes about the stuff she didn't think needed to be in it. And that's why it took so long as well, because this is not just an end product, and I hope you kind of understand that maybe after today, is that there was so much more involved in this than just me standing in front of a canvas and painting a painting. This was a collaboration. This isn't about me. This is about the story that I've delivered. And the story is what's powerful here, not just the painting. And if I can only work with whatever content I have. And I think she was incredibly, incredibly given, and she's been that given to everybody all over the country.
I'm just transfixed, and I'm, you know, I suppose I can't take my eyes off her. But the medium that both of you have done in telling the story, but to create awareness and to change lives, you know, I have great, I suppose, hope is the word. I have great hope that this is going to transform, not just women, but men and society. And I like the bit that you put in about the doctors, you know, that they need to come down to the level, because we're experts in our own health, and you need to be assisted, you know, if it's to die with dignity, that's what needs to happen. So I'm very moved.
And thank you for that. And do you know what? That's really a big moment for me, because when me and Vicky decided what it was going to be involved in it, she said, I want it to be a painting of hope. So you've hit the mark for me there now, and thank you for that. Because we don't want people to come to this and necessarily be upset. It's okay to be upset. It's okay if you've gone through stuff. It's okay if you're upset for Vicky. But we wanted to empower. So if you have had a diagnosis or a prognosis coming forward, you can stand in front of this painting and say, well, do you know what? If Vicky Phelan could do it, then I can do it. And she's had a lot. And she's still here. And she fought tooth and nail. And I'm absolutely privileged to even call her a friend, to even know her. Because there's something about this woman that I've never encountered. Now, I know I'm only a pup, I'm only 35, you know, as people keep saying to me. But she's changed my life. She's changed my daughter's life. She's changed any women in my life. So thank you for that, because we do want it to be a message of hope, and that people will draw strength from it long after we're all gone. Not just after Vicky's gone out, long after we're all gone, you know?
Do you have a title for this? And I heard the word triptych being used earlier. If you could explain maybe.
Yeah, so it's quite simply the Triptych portrait of Vicky Phelan. No big imagination there. A triptych is a very old historical thing in art history. So it's primarily a religious thing, where normally there would be two smaller doors each side. And during the, we'll say, day-to-day, say, church going, the doors that would be here would be closed over, and it would be telling a story of something in religious history. And then on a special occasion, the door would be opened out, and the middle panel would be revealed. So it's a very old, archaic mode of expression, but the triptych just means 3 panels, and because it can be read from left to right, and we deal in past, present, and future, it just translates very well to narration and storytelling.
It's very moving to listen to it. And this International Women's Day, a lot of what we're talking about is a woman's issue. And our society ignores women in many ways in health issues. But I'd love to see it presented at the International Men's Day to young men, because the men ignore cancer. Cancer is
What I would say to you is bring it to International Men's Day to young men and have the same conversation, because men need to actually take control also, in many ways more in terms of health.
That's a super point. That's fantastic. And this is also a call to men as well, to say, look, there is an ability to have conversations that need to be had, but unless we start to have them, they won't progress into where they need to be. And like I said, I mean, this is International Women's Day as well, and men do ignore a lot as well, and women are very much open about speaking about things. And equality is important in opportunities, but there also needs to be respect for our diversity as well, because we can really gain a lot from people's different expertise and experience. And I think that speaks perfectly to what you're trying to articulate there, is that if we have it in all the different spaces, we can create a dialogue between different people and different experiences in order to affect the change in the future. And the thing about painting in general is it's very non-confrontational and very non-aggressive and non-violent. It's the perfect way to get across a message, because people can walk up to this painting and engage with it for 5 minutes, or can engage with it for 15, 20, or an hour and a half if you're so inclined. But what happens is a dialogue and a conversation around the painting is what I think is going to really affect a lot of change. And that's why I think what David Brennan has done here is very advanced, because I don't think it's been done before really to this level, you know?
Can I ask, is there a reason why it's at night time as opposed to during the day? Is there a logic behind it doing it at night?
I mean, it depends. I mean, sometimes I'll paint something and then the idea will come afterwards as to what the symbolism may be. Now, the shadow of her means high noon. So because it's shining like that, it kind of means it's time to get stuff done now. And when it was painted, you have to remember, I didn't get to see this until the moon coin. Vicky saw this separately to me at the Late Late Show. And we never got to stand in front of it together until the event in the inaugural show in Moon Coin. And the reason it's kind of set like that as well is because that night in Doonbeg, that evening, I took the photographs as the sun was going down, and the mood and the lighting that we got is indicative of the painting. So I kind of matched the colour to the painting. But the thing about the painting and the coloration as well is that it works in all these different light settings, and it will change in mood and tone depending on what light hits it. And a lot of my work is like that, where different lights will hit at different times of the day. And then just the coloration and stuff as well, it's very easy in the eye, so that's kind of part of the reason as well.
Thank you so much. This resonates in so many ways. I read a book about this artist Artemisia years ago, but the colours you've used to me is the blue and the red is very much reminiscent of that 17th century Italian artist Guercino and others. Those two shades, but to me, as a woman, I'm also a biologist, so I think the blue and the red, the less oxygenated and more oxygenated blood in the body. I worked on endometriosis for some years. My group essentially discovered a hormone, and I've heard many similar stories to women put down very painful menstruation, it's in your head, this and that, which really isn't the message, because when your pain is 9 out of 10, that's something real. But I also, I'm delighted that men are speaking to this, because it is something, it's another disease that impacts a women's health and ability to work and live well very negatively. But I'd really like to thank you for the visceral nature of the painting, that very anatomic openness, because it's, in a sense, you're showing strength through weakness. The person has undergone a huge amount physically, psychologically. What has come out of that, and it's the externalizing, the openness, the transparency, the externalizing of that, and the dealing of it, which is how we deal with any difficult issues, be they medical, institutional, hierarchical, HR. You know, it's that process that I feel really imbued into the painting in a very, very powerful way. And I'd like to really thank you sincerely for this, because it's been an absolute epic, sensorial and symbolic process. Bringing us through the 3 panels has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Vicky.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to just say thanks again. And I hope you got something from that. I know every time I do, I get something extra from it. And I sincerely want to thank everyone for their time, because time is a very important thing now these days. So, like I said, I really hope you got something from that. And thank you all again for your time.
Vincent, thank you so much for that. I think incredibly powerful and very emotional journey through your fantastic work. And I think it was a lucky day for us all, the day you met Vicky Phelan. And what a combination, and what a portrait we have here. So just thank you so much. So just before we conclude our event, Vincent, you're a difficult act to follow, but we're going to try. But before we do that, I'd just like to sincerely thank everyone who has made today's event possible. The support from everybody across WIT has been amazing. Our catering staff, porters, technicians, musicians, everybody in our committee who gave so freely of their time to make our International Women's Day such a memorable event. And I know that everyone did that for Vicky. And in what I think is going to be a really fitting end to our event here today, I would like to call upon Dr. Krista de Bruyne, who is a lecturer in English literature here at WIT, along with one of our recent WIT graduates, Mary McCarthy, and one of our current students, Catherine Bradley. And they are going to read a poem that has been composed for Vicky in honour of today's event, Triptych in Blue.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy International Women's Day to you all. And what a heartfelt celebration of Vicky's life today and her achievements, of all that she has overcome and the battle she continues to blaze, carrying the fire for her health and for ours. We, the community in WIT, are all holding Vicky and her family very close to our hearts today. David, through his kindness, has brought the painting here to us today. And Vincent, through his magic, has poured Vicky's life into portrait, painting the blurs and hues of time into triptych, creating a symbol of hope and a legacy of precious moments. I was asked to write a few words in response to the portrait, and I have asked two wonderful students to join me, past student Mary McCarthy and current student Catherine Bradley. So together, 3 generations of women unite in solidarity and gratitude to Vicky, reading Triptych in Blue.
Triptych in blue, whirling hues of blue, darker the deeper. Life folded, pressed by deft hands into triptych. Flesh and blood clothe themselves in thunder. Guilt spills her shrouded shores, foundered by flaming steed.
You sit, radiant as lava, eyes blaze dominion, hair burnished like newly spun gold wire, body hollowed under siege in service of myth. The crimson lowery unfolds its wings, roots stretch and swoon in stilled accord. Metal gleams in sapphire sky.
The veil grows thin, seams of light split into shimmering hours of silk stitched by solace, each moment a sacred guest. The moon gathers her stars, folding waves in deep blue shadows on the azure sea. Stippled footprints in swept sand proclaim your cerulean spirit on silver strand. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful composition. Thank you. So look, that concludes our event here this morning. The painting will still be here for viewing until about 2:30, so please come and view, and I think we'll all be looking at it again with new eyes, Vincent, following your talk. And again, just to thank everybody for their support here today. We are still collecting funds for the 2 charities, so don't be shy in putting a few bob into the boxes on the way out. And thank you so much.